get a message up on your screen.
Certainly is. Thank you. Okay, welcome everybody to this Community Events Working Party, Monday the 14th of April. Usual thing about any decisions we make have to be ratified by leisure and community or the clerk under delegated powers. So moving quickly on to number 2, apologies for absence, please.
Chair, we have apologies from Councillor Page and also Councillor Hanlon.
Lovely, thank you. And item 3, request for dispensation. Anybody? Nobody's putting their hands up. That's fine. And moving on quickly to item number 4.
Yeah, we're going to come on to the minutes in a second. Just say when you see the minutes, I have updated them to reflect the correct membership, as the draft minutes that were circulated had Councillor Liz Smith down as absent, which is hardly surprising as she's not on the committee. And so apologies to Liz for doing that.
Yeah, well done. I never picked that one up. Well, that's good. Thank you. Right, minutes of the previous meeting held on Tuesday the 14th of January, as we were just talking about. Apart from that minor change of removing Liz Smith, anyone like to propose acceptance? Anybody? Councillor Tony Brown, seconded by... Come on, don't all put your hands up at once. Anybody? Well, I'll do it then in that case. All right, all those in favour, please show. Lovely, thank you very much. Matters arising not on the agenda, there aren't any. Unless anyone's desperate to see that on the screen, we're going to go through the thing anyway. So I think we'll probably move straight on to item number 6, which is public speaking. I think we haven't got anybody. Okay. So moving on, let's move on to item number 7. I think most of this is going to be Sarah and Gary, I suspect. So, first of all, the beer festival being held in June, 21st, 22nd of June.
21st. Yes, that's all going very well. The camera volunteers are on it, so they've got a good beer menu sorted. We're going to put the price up a little bit on the beer this year, and we're going to put the entrance price up by £1. We're hoping we got 266 last year, and we're hoping for 350 people and to sell about 1,200 pints. So that's what we're aiming for. Nethergate are our main partners again. And we've got the entertainment booked, which is good. So we've got Steve Spall, who went down very well last year. He was the solo performer. Slim Pickens, who played at the King's Coronation picnic we had at on the recreation ground. And we've got Undine Ward, who is a jazz pianist, and we've also got the open mic. So what we're going to do is really focus on the fact that it's a brilliant night's entertainment for very little pence. And hopefully the nice weather will bring people out and it will all go very well. And I think that's probably it on camera, unless anyone's got any questions.
Are you sorting out the weather, are you?
Yes, I do have a personal line to God, so
That's fine, that's fine. I'm just making sure. It's okay. Look, Councillor Miller-Jones. You're still muted.
Yeah,
there you go.
The app's changed and I haven't been using it on my phone for a while, so I couldn't find the unmute. Just on the, I don't know if it was last year or the year before, but there was a discussion about how there was loads of beer thrown away at the end, and we had talked about if there was something that we could do, about that. And I can't I think it might have been a couple of years ago, so I don't know if that issue's been resolved, but I was just wondering about that.
Well, we did have a little bit of beer left, which we made good use of. But the camera volunteers so their names Jeff and Chris. They have got last year's figures and they're working out the 60 barrels based on that. So there is a bit of maths, not maths from my side, maths from Chris and Jeff going on in the background. So we anticipate that we should be able to get more people, because I think last year was the first year we'd had it for a while, and so hopefully building up this year we can get the 350 tickets sold. We do need some volunteers. Bruce and Elaine have very kindly volunteered for Saturday night, but if anybody knows of any other volunteers, that would be very useful.
Sorry, can I just that's great. Like hopefully obviously there won't be any leftover, and I'm sure they've like done their maths and everything, but it's just if there are loads of unopened barrels left over, or even a couple, what do we do with them? Have we got something to do with them? I mean,
well, the ales you can't reuse, so if there's a bit of the stuff left in the barrel, then we do actually have to get rid of it. But the ciders, we don't have to. So the ciders, we're safer with those.
yeah. Thank you.
Councillor Lucrini?
I can't remember if this was last year either, but was there something to do with pricing last year where the price of half a pint half a pints didn't match the price of a full pint, which caused some issues with the tickets we were selling?
I think it was last year, but Jeff is on the prices this year, so I think there's a photo somewhere. I think it was £4.20 for a pint last year, and we're thinking of raising it to £4.80. But then he did look at that thing of getting the breakdown right, so that's in Jeff's hands, but he is on it.
Lovely, thank you.
We're not accounting, are we? Like the tills for this?
I think last year we had a button on the bar till.
Yeah, that's right. We did for
ongoing beer card sales, which I was anticipating using the same system this year.
Yeah, because the guys behind who's serving don't actually handle money, do they?
No, they have those cards.
That's right. That's fine. Yeah, we can do the same thing again. Just might need to adjust the price, as you say. That's fine. We can do that.
Yeah, we're going to sell them in £10 lots anyway, so I don't think that will need adjusting. It's just the price of the actual pints are going to go up a little bit. So it will be the men and women on the bar that have to do the adding up and stuff like that, but the overall cost to the punter will be the same.
Okay. All right. Anybody else? Oh, sorry, Councillor Lucani. So you're back again.
Yeah, that reminds me. I think that was the problem, Sarah, that it just meant that when you bought a card for £10, if you then bought a pint of beer, you're always left with this little bit of change that.
But I think
that's hard not to do with.
That is a canny way of trying to get more donations to charities. So
yeah, I remember that being said last time, but from memory, I think people were just getting slightly frustrated that it almost seemed a little bit like a con.
Well, to be honest, it's a bit of a nudge. I wouldn't say a con. I'd say a nudge towards returning your not getting the full refund on your £5 thing. But if again it goes up to £4.80 instead of £4.20, that's going to take it to about 40p or 10p, or just really, really small.
Yeah, I just wondered if a better way of doing it is actually to say that, every pint includes a donation of X, 20p or.
Yeah, maybe. I shall put it to the team. It's just that's the way that most beer weekends are run. So we've just sort of copied and gone with their recommendations. But I could put it to them because I don't really know the answer.
So, Laura, Councillor Jones again.
Laura,
Sorry, I'm really sorry. I don't know what I'm doing. Yeah, so can I just clarify that? Is it so people pay for a £5 or £10 sort of voucher thing, which they then are spending on a £4.80 pint or half or whatever. If they have sort of say they buy a £5 thing, they buy 1 pint, there's 20p left on it. Can that be refunded to them if they want it to be refunded? That 20p?
No, so it's got to be a full. So you buy £10 worth of a £10 beer card, and that's split into two, which is a £5 on each side. And you got to. This is the way it worked last year. I'm not saying following Aaron's comments it would work again this year, but you'd have to have a full £5 in order to get a donation. So you couldn't spend any part of that half of the £5. I'm explaining that very badly.
Yeah, no, you're not. But in that case, I do agree with Aaron. I think that just seems you're essentially saying beer's a £5, we're pretending it's 4.80, but it's not because you can't get your 20p back. And I know it's only 20p, but 4.80 is already, I mean, I know it's not expensive for pints compared to pubs nowadays, but it's a lot of money. It is, pints aren't cheap now. And I just feel like it would bother me being told, yeah, pints 4.80, but you can't have your 20p back. It does feel like a little bit scammy. Like I agree with Aaron. It's just there's something a bit off about it. It's like because essentially it is a £5. People have to spend a £5. So why call it 4.80?
Yeah,
it doesn't sit right with me.
It was to encourage those donations to the community trust and the hospice, but I'll just go back to them and say, this is what's come out. What do you reckon?
I mean, sorry to come back without permission. Sorry. I know you said that that's the way that a lot of them are done. I haven't been to a lot of beer festivals around the country, but the ones that I have been to, and the Cambridge one, which I've been to a lot, they do it with an actual ticket system for the drinks, so that you buy tokens that you then it just buys you a half pint of anything or a pint of anything. But and I know that's similar, but it kind of makes more sense to me if you want to do that. Just don't give it a price. Just don't tell people it's 4.80. Just say this is your ticket that you can get a pint with or 2 half pints with. Do you see what I mean? Because that's the way it's done at other beer festivals. They never have prices. Or at least in my experience, it's literally just tokens, and it's like, here's my token for a drink.
Yeah, I'll go back to them and say, I know this is what you've been doing and this is what you recommended, but this is what the committee said. So, and then I'll report back.
Okay. I'm going to sound really ignorant now because I have no idea how much of a pint is in a pub because I don't drink, so I have no idea.
I think as well the price of a real ale as a real ale drinker, £4.80 is kind of getting to the high end. For example, you can walk. We shouldn't always compare it to Wetherspoons, but the real ale in Wetherspoons that I've had the past couple of weeks, I've been paying £2.20 in Haverhill, and I've been paying £3.20 in Norwich. So going up for a real ale, which is something you can get in Wetherspoons for half the price, may well put people off. I would suggest potentially we look to drop the price down to £4. I mean, I don't know what the overheads and the margins are. I'm not trying to get involved in that. I'm just suggesting, as an ale drinker, £4.80, £5 is what I'd be prepared. What you basically have to pay for BrewDog, rather than something from Nethergate or local providers. You'll have more people in spending more money if it's £3.50, £4 a pint. They will literally cane through those kegs and casks.
Can I, before going to Councillor Smith. Sarah, you just mentioned, are we donating to St Nicholas Hospice again? Because I don't know whether we've had this discussion yet, but I don't know if there's any other charity we should be donating to. Or is that Camera's requirement?
That was Camera's suggestion, and then our half was going to go to the community trust.
Okay. Okay, in that case, can I ask that question? How much did we raise last year?
I can't remember off the top of my head. I'll have to look that up.
Was it a lot?
It wasn't very much.
No, I'm just wondering whether we're
It
doing
was-
something that may be slightly pointless in that case. Councillor Smith.
Yeah, just observation. I don't think the beer you get at beer festival is necessarily the same stuff as you get at a Wetherspoons. I mean, it's not exactly the same clientele, is it? Serious real ale drinkers. Do they drink BrewDog? I don't know. That's
The Wetherspoons, every
that's a children's drink to me.
Wetherspoons have a real ale section in every single one, and they're quite well known. Wetherspoons. They also have a
Okay, let's not compare different breweries and everything else. I think what we're going to do, this is being organised primarily by Camera and Nethergate, and they've got their own costs and everything. I mean, whether £5, people do come at £4.85 a pint, whatever it is. Whether or not I quite like the idea that Councillor Miller-Jones said then about perhaps having tokens rather than bits of paper that you have to stamp or something, but that's another matter. Okay, anyone else got anything else on that? No, should we move on? Should we take the other the fund days as in a group? There was something on the minutes that came up. Oh yeah, about the possibility of moving the Clements. Did anything come of that at all, Colin?
Yeah,
Or Sarah?
Not me. Sarah and Gary have looked at this.
No, okay, it was just under your name. That was all on the minutes.
Well, Gary and I went and did a recce of the Puddlebrook the other day, and we think it might be nice to try it there for this year, because it's a much more aesthetically pleasing site, that we won't have the issues with the car parks and trying to get people out of the way. So that's our plan at the moment. We've got a load of stuff booked in, and I won't go through the list of everything booked in for each thing because that would be really boring. But there's the normal selection of stuff. One thing to note is that the cost of the inflatables is practically eating up the whole budget. Is that the hire of the inflatables is quite reasonable, and then when you add in the costs of the staff, it takes it really high, and so there's not very much money left in that 1850 for anything else. So yeah, so Chalkston, that's all okay because Jacqueline runs that, with just a bit of minor input from us. The Clements Fund Day, we're thinking of moving to Puddlebrook. Picnic in the park.
Well, what about Parkway, Sarah? Is that going to happen?
Yeah, I met with John the other week, and after much toing and froing, we've got a date of the 29th of July. So the day before the 30th. A day before the 30th, obviously, a day before the Clements Fund Day, and yeah, I've lost my train of thought on that. Anyway, so
you were talking about inflatables and getting rid of those, and what you're doing.
We can't have many inflatables on the parkway because it's there's a very limited grassy area, and I did look into alternatives like a roller rink, which could go on that hard standing, but it was absolutely exorbitant cost. So we've had to go back to just one little inflatable just to put on the grass area in front of the church. Picnic in the Park, we've got a dog show this year by Hawkton and Haverhill Vet, so we're going to move the location. It's not going to be within the play area, which we've done previously, but to the side, just away from the pond area. I think that's probably it. We're going to try and set up a mobile box office for Haverhill Arts Centre at these events this year, and sell tickets direct from the events. And I think that is pretty much a summary of where we are on the fun days.
Yeah, before I get on to Councillor Brown, can I just ask about Puddlebrook? Going back to Puddlebrook, what are we going to do about toilets?
I've got a quote for some portaloos.
Okay, is are the changing rooms still in operation up there? Anyone know that? Councillor Lucarini, before I get on to Tony Brown.
They are, but they're a long way from probably where Sarah's thinking.
Yeah, I don't know exactly whereabouts on Puddlebrook at all. Okay, yeah, I just
Boxing club next to the
yeah, next to the boxing club. Yeah, yeah.
surgery. That's a fair walk.
Yeah, the Puddlebrook is on one side of the school and the changing rooms are on the other.
Yeah, that's okay. Thanks for that. Councillor Brown? No, you don't want to talk? No? Oh, okay. Don't love me anymore, that's what it is. I know. Okay. All right, anyone got anything on the fun days and picnic as we spoke about as well? When you say in East Town Park, as you face, as you're back to the car park, you're talking about left or right?
I'm talking about right.
Okay, that big green area, yeah?
Yeah, sort of Millennium Meadow, but
Yeah.
closer.
Yeah, I know where you are. Yeah, I know you are. Okay. All right. Anybody got any comments on any of those? I'm just having a look down the well, we've already covered those two items we had on the minutes. Okay. Right, then we move on to the big one. Haverhill in the Park, 15th, the 18th. Just a reminder, on the morning of the 15th at 0900, we got the flag raising for VJ Day. And we've moved the event we were going to hold in the church. We've moved it to the 21st now. If for those of you who don't know that. Right, Haverhill in the Park then.
Can I just flag, sorry,
Yeah.
can I just flag that on the sheet itself, it says Friday to Sunday, but we're not doing Friday to Sunday, it's just Friday and Saturdays.
That is very true, yes.
Steve Marsh, Gary, Colin and I had a meeting a couple of 3 weeks ago, maybe, can't quite remember, but we talked about ways of packing more into the site to make it more of a family friendly and to try and encourage people on the outside to come in with the lure of inflatables and more stuff going on. So we looked at relocating various things such as the toilets, and Steve Marsh has gone away and is referring back to the purple book and all stuff like that. So hopefully within the next couple of days or a week or so, we'll have more information on that. You probably know that Steve Marsh had booked Pink as the headliner, or not Pink, a Pink tribute as a headliner for Friday, and Stereo Jack doing Ibiza anthems on Saturday. So that's all good. Gary and Colin, is there anything else I've missed out from that meeting?
I think the key aspect was that we were looking to remodel the site, as you've said. It does involve moving a few things around. Yeah, it's a work in progress the next few weeks to kind of come up with that. I think that's the most major change that we'll have. We discussed the potentiality of adding more traders in, did we? Or concession stands to...
Well, yes, that was the purpose of the change around, is to facilitate a bit more of a village at the back of the site where there'd be additional traders and more stuff for families.
Yeah. To me, the core element of the whole festival is, I think, is having people on site and being secure with families. So that's what we're looking to do.
A couple of things while I remember is not last year, maybe the year before, it was suggested, whether it'll work or not, I don't know, about actually moving the stage around. So the stage and the kiosk and everything becomes all integral somehow. So it's that way round. That was one suggestion. And somebody said to me the other day, and I can't remember who it was, nobody from here, why don't we just take more of the recreation ground? And I explained about the public right, well, the footpaths anyway, not necessarily they're not all public rights away, but certainly the footpaths. That might cause problems to expand out. But even if you don't use the whole area, just use maybe half of one quadrant or something like that, if that was possible. And I agree with you, we need to try and encourage those people to come in if we can. And the only other thing is, from a practical point of view, just something to bear in mind when we get nearer the thing is we need to sort the. I've lost you again. It keeps moving around. Food vouchers side of things this year. Last year it didn't work very well because some people were taking them, some people weren't. So that's an internal problem amongst ourselves, but we need to sort that out. How, particularly on if I don't know on the food side, are we doing something, or are we bringing in a caterer to do burgers and stuff to try and?
Steve Marsh was going to go. Steve Marsh was going away to see how much more we could fit in by rejigging things around, and once he's done that, then we'll be able to work out what we want to bring on. But we did have those discussions about having various price points and catering to various tastes.
Councillor Greeny.
Yeah, I was going to ask about food stalls, whether there's any confirmed or not yet.
I think he mentioned, I can't remember their name. It's the Mexican one.
Tacos, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. And then in terms of alcohol, have we confirmed bar or?
No, that was something else that Steve was going away to look at, because we talked about how the double decker didn't have enough throughput, and it was slowing things down, and so Steve's gone away to look at possible alternatives for that.
Okay, cool. That was going to be my kind of main comment. That they just can't cope. Also as well, they were running a real ale stand, which as a real ale drinker I love, and it seemed fairly popular. Are we going to look at that again? And if so, actually, could we potentially go out to any of the local breweries? I have suggested before whether Roughacre and Clare, they do the Haverhill show, whether they would be interested in running that kind of stand.
Yeah, I think we talked about all of this, and so we just now need to wait for Steve to come back with some logistical possibilities for us, and then we'll be able to go ahead and make some decisions.
Sure.
Anything? Oh, sorry, Councillor Miller-Jones.
Yes, thank you. Just can we make sure there's at least something vegan available, please? Thank you.
Anything else? Anybody else? Are we distributing workloads this year from not making sure not everybody's all done by one person or a couple of people?
Well, we've had this initial meeting with Steve, so that's the start of that process of sharing the workload out a little bit more. So yes, we hope that's what's going to.
I know Councillor Greeny mentions it all the time normally. Is when are we going to start advertising? I know it's 4 months away, but people are organising holidays and things.
Yeah, well, it's going out in the brochure, which is due to go out in the next couple of weeks. And Joe, if he was here, but he's not, he's on holiday, would probably tell us he's got a schedule planned.
Okay, thank you. Just raised up. Okay, anybody else on HIP at all? No. Right, moving on. Oh, seems a long way away, but soon comes round. Halloween Trail. this year on the 31st of October by coincidence. I don't know. I did work out how often that happens. But anyway. Right, any plans at all?
Yeah, Gary, Steve Marsh, Kay, and I went up to the park about a month ago to look for an alternative route to switch things up a little bit. And Christine gave us permission to use the extreme right-hand side of Mott's Field as a queuing system. It doesn't go onto the football pitches at all. But that will allow us to come up and go through the trail in a different way. So Steve Marsh and Kay have also been tasked with getting some quotes from alternative suppliers for the tech stuff. And we've booked in, because it's even, I mean, I booked in ages ago a load of acts because the 31st things are going to be in demand, so I wanted to get that done early. So yeah, we're pretty much in advance on that one, I think.
Any changes to the queuing system, particularly the bit from Chalkstone Way?
Well, the idea, and Gary might be able to come in on this one, was to come in from Mott's Field. Is that right, Gary?
I think the key aspect to this is what we're concerned about is having so many people arrive for this, due to it being actually the night itself, is ensuring that we've got the capacity to queue people without them ending up back on the road. And I know we did that quite successfully last year, but just with respect to the numbers that we may get, the aspects of queuing them on the field, there'll be a fence formation across the field, as Sarah said, not onto the football pitches itself, but running parallel to the wooded area and then heading down towards the road where the flats are, to give us that extra capacity. And then they come onto the site via the ramp. I don't want to say it's ramp, it's obviously that slight incline, and then onto the site directly from there. The key thing is to ensure that we've got enough zigzag fencing formation to allow that queue to build at that point, and be able to secure that so people can't push in. As there were a few kids who did push in a couple of years ago. So we're cognizant of those demands on the queuing system. So I'm hopeful, and I've pushed for this to be manageable. Thanks.
Councillor Miller-Jones.
Yeah, would it be possible to have some entertainment in, or like on Mott's Field where the queuing is? Because I know it's so hard for some people, especially the kids, to queue, and it's a really long time, and then people are whinging and being negative and sort of saying, oh, the queues were so long. But if there was something there, I don't know what. There was some amazing at the end. At some point, I'm sure it was at our Halloween trail, there was some really cool like fire juggler people and stuff that you had at the sort of end part. I wonder if something like that could be by the queue, something just to keep people from, being miserable in the queue. Also, potentially some kind of food stand. I know there's going to be fencing for the queue. It's going to be one of those, but people can still duck under it, leave their family in the queue, to keep their place, and sort of duck under to buy things for people if people are getting sort of thirsty or hungry or whatever in the queue, get some, I don't know what, candy floss for the kids, you know what I mean? Just something to keep people happy in the queue. It might really help with kind of morale.
Yeah, I mean, last year I did try and do that with the storyteller, and Joni did some face painting, but the problem is the budget doesn't particularly stretch to having stuff at the beginning and at the end. But I do understand that it's a long and boring and cold wait for children.
I was going to say one thing, Mike, Councillor Jones actually beat me to that, because I was going to ask about that, because I got that complaint a lot last year, is whether we ought to have markers to say you are 10 minutes away from the beginning or something like that.
But what if we get that wrong?
Well, I understand that, but the problem was last year I was getting loads and loads of complaints for people who were stood there for an hour or more, not knowing what was going on. They've been told to get there for a certain time, and they say, well, hang on a minute, at times gone, and my kid, like Councillor Miller Jones just said, yeah, there's nothing to entertain them standing there for an hour waiting to get in. They're in a dark field primarily.
I mean, I am cognizant of such, like when you go to Alton Towers, then you say it's an hour from here. I'm aware of that, but when you go to Alton Towers, the black hole of the corkscrew is always moving. So you always have the same time at a certain point, at a certain position. The issue that we have in this queue is that we could say you are 15 minutes away from whatever, but we've held up because remember we have pauses to allow them to have the break. So we could have a sign that said you're 10 minutes from the start, but you're being held for 20 minutes because they've got to have a pause. So it's quite difficult to manage that in this circumstance. I'm completely aware of Councillor's point about this, and I think we can look into something like that, but it has to be manageable, I think, realistic. I think maybe the key thing is maybe the use of loud hailers or something to say the queue is paused, you're going to be here,
whatever,
for 20 minutes. One of the other points as well is that I know Laura's point about people leaving the queue. I'd rather that people didn't leave the queue at any point, because that is an absolute nightmare to get people on and off, and it's very much open to abuse, and you end up with social behaviour issues. And I'd like to keep the queue as contained as possible. Otherwise, people get very, very fussy and antsy about it.
Yeah, but you've got to obviously be aware equally that there's about 6 or 7 entrances into East Town Park you can get into from anywhere without queuing up.
Yeah, well, we'll have to put staffing on those points and make sure that the staff, the volunteers, whomever, point people in the right direction, and it goes out on social media that the entry point is by the field and not by any other point. I am in agreement of that.
We have to think about vehicles as well. But anyway, Councillor Miller Jones again.
Thank you. Yeah, just I agree about possibly loud hailers. I was thinking if you're going to have a member of staff near, like, monitoring the queue anyway, it's probably not a difficult thing for somebody to radio that member of staff and say this is when the pause is. So even if it's not a loud hailer, even if it's just literally going up to people in the queue and saying you are this amount of minutes away from the start or whatever, I think that's definitely better than signs. Just on what you said, Sarah, in response to my question about having sort of entertainment about not being able to afford it at the beginning and the end. I don't know how much we've got planned for the end, but I just wonder whether it would be worth potentially taking some of that out and having it by the queue, because in a way I feel like that's possibly more important, because people are going for the trail, not really for the end. Do you know what I mean? It's the trail is the attraction. So obviously it's nice to have, like, some stuff at the end and people, have a chance to buy things and like watch the entertainment. But I don't know. I don't know if you can answer how, like, what is actually planned for the end, and if there's potentially anything that is planned that could be moved to the queue.
Yeah, so well, the feedback I got from the fire eaters or fire performers last year, because I put them in that little bit called Maggie's, I think it's Maggie's Lay, and I thought that would provide a bit of entertainment, but they said nobody even looked at them, as they just felt ignored, and from their point of view they preferred going at the end. I've got a couple of, so I've spoken to Robert Henry Summers, who's our showman contact, and told him we've got to have more stuff this year to come to the end, but he hasn't actually specified what. I've also got 2 big selfie things which we could possibly put in the queue, but then so it's like a Grim Reaper's chair and a massive pumpkin which people just pose in, which we could put in at the beginning, but I just asked Gary about the leaving the queue business, whether we could work that so people didn't skip in and out.
Well, he's got time to think about all these things anyway, but yeah, just some ideas. Sorry, Councillor Miller Jones again.
Yeah, just on that, would it be possible to put like those selfie things actually in the queue? So that, because they often have that at theme parks where there's something in the queue and it holds up the queue a bit, but it doesn't really matter because it's not going anywhere, just ahead anyway. So that when people arrive at it in the queue, they can do their selfies and be a bit entertained for a bit before moving on. I don't know if
Yeah, that's a distinct possibility.
Before I get on to Councillor Lucchini, one of the other complaints I had last year standing up on Chalkstone Way for a couple of hours is the number of people who said you had ins and outs going at the same time, and people were avoiding people, and there was no lighting in there, so they were bumping into people. So I'm hoping that whatever's planned this year is an in and an out rather than a in and out. If you understand what I mean, something to think about. I don't need an answer now. Just think about it.
Well, we did think about this, and I think I'm right, Gary. We've got a definite in and a definite out this year, haven't we?
Good. Okay, that's
Yeah,
fine.
we did learn from that to have
Yeah, just I'm putting my 2 penny worth in. Councillor Lucchini.
Yeah, just on the queue, I think it's going to be really difficult to keep people entertained. I think we just have to accept that the queue is long. It's a very successful event, and it is what it is a little bit. The fire eaters didn't really work because they were stuck in one place, and the trouble is with the queue line we've got, it's either moving fast or it suddenly comes to a complete stop. So if you've got acts that are just in one place on the queue line, only a small group of people are stuck at that point and can see them, which would be the same if we had kind of the selfie boards. It would be a small group of people would be stuck at that point, and then all of a sudden the queue would start moving again, and most people would probably walk straight past because they want to keep going and get round. So I think we just have to accept it. And I was stewarding the queue line last year, and to be honest, the vast majority of people were absolutely fine. There was 1 or 2 moans, but the vast majority were really pleased with what we'd put on, and certainly when you spoke to people coming out at the end, they had such a great time. So I think we've got to be careful not to listen to those that are moaning too much. I really do think they are in the minority.
Yeah, although I had about 60 to 70 people moan to me just at
There was a few people that tried to moan on Facebook, and there was hundreds of
people. I don't read those.
Down, so
yeah, I don't read those, so I don't subscribe to those Facebook pages. So. Anyway, time will quickly come up, but I'm sure it's all. Anybody else on Halloween Trail at all? No. Right, let's move on to the Christmas events. I think there was something on the. Bear with me. Sorry, I was just looking at the minutes. So we'll do both together. Oh yeah, that's right. It was about groups are in the parade, and I've lost my screen. We'll do both event and the fireworks. I presume we've got another parade, have we planned?
Yeah, it went down very well last year. So I've spoken to Clary, who is the person we used last year, and she's more than happy for us to work with her again this year. I've put in a couple of, put in one funding application with another one pending to see if we can get some money towards doing community workshops and school workshops beforehand for costume making, etc. So I'll have to wait and hear about that. As I said in the last meeting, the groups that took part last year were keen to take part, are keen to take part this year as well. Put some props for Queen Street. Hopefully we can keep Queen Street happy. It's like some massive polar bears, which would be a selfie opportunity. And as we talked about last year, we just have to have a little tweak of some of the logistics, but it's April, so there's time.
I know it may not be the right time, but to me, if you're going to call it a carnival, let's say, the old-fashioned way of doing things when when I was a kid was literally local businesses lent you a flatbed lorry, and people would sit on it, and you'd drive along the high street.
I don't think we could do that because of the amount of people. I think it would be an absolute nightmare to. I think we should stick to the walking procession would be my.
Just a thought. Yeah, I think it's people. Some people have actually mentioned it to me. Would it be nice to have something that goes around the town and then ends up at the high street? So those people who can't get into the town can actually see what's going on. But anyway, that's something to think.
We're not at Notting Hill levels yet, so maybe.
You mean yet? Why not?
I think always, John, you've got to remember that we have to staff the square and the fireworks site. If we had volunteers, we had enough pool of people who could volunteer to staff the roads and so on and so on. Yes, but we need to dramatically improve our pool.
Yeah, I know. I don't understand why other towns manage to do it. We can't on that sort of side of things. I don't know whether do we ask the public? Can they come along and help? But I don't know. All right. Anything else on the actual event itself? No. What about the fireworks, Gary, side of things? Anything? Nothing presumably at this stage?
Not at this stage, no. It's a while away, yeah.
Yeah.
The fireworks site will run. I think the next set of logistics that we need to discuss moving forward, probably in a couple of weeks, so I can get the road closures in, is to discuss how and why, in which bits the roads we're closing. So we can put the road closures in and it's done and dusted then. But we have an idea what we're going to work towards then. But I think that would be my next suggestion, that we meet to discuss.
Yeah.
Aspects.
Well, I had an interesting meeting with Councillor Lukin. I've lost him there. He's down the bottom there. With the town centre master plan people last Friday. We were talking about illuminations rather than putting up Christmas decorations, is actually using technology to do stuff. And they were the consultants were talking about a particular company that they're using. I can't remember, but I happened to see a YouTube thing a week or so ago of actually Tower Bridge all lit up, and I was very impressed with what it looked like, particularly when it opened to allow a cruise ship through. It was actually the cruise ship I was more interested in, but I wonder whether at some point we ought to start thinking about actually, let's not keep putting the same Christmas lights up every year, Christmas decorations up every year, whether we should use technology, which we could possibly use all year round. What they were saying with, they used some sort of, I think it was called a template filter or something. He said, yes, you may spend a bit more money initially, but on long term you don't, because you don't have to keep putting them up and down every year. Something to think about for later. Right. I think Connie's looking at me in disgust. I think I can't remember the name of the company now. It did tell me the website of the anyway. Right. Anything else on those? Oh, sorry, Councillor Miller-Jones.
Yeah, it's just I'm being a broken record, and I know the reasons that everybody has said that we can't have the musical fireworks thing because everybody can't hear it, and you can only hear it if you're near the bandstand. But I think we had a conversation about, would it not be possible to, put some speakers around? And I think the answer was maybe that it was too expensive, but it's still something that I think we should consider. Yes, Colin.
I think Colin is probably going to say what I was going to say about alternatives, but go on.
Well, we've got a perfectly good PA system that can put the sound round. Yes, the debate last time round was about spending as much money as Haverhill in the Park for a sound system for 15 minutes. And I wasn't prepared to approve that because that was not a good use of taxpayers' money. We have our own PA system, which will put out music. Now, unfortunately, you can hear you'll hear the fireworks from Keddington. You won't hear the music from Keddington. It will be what it will be. There's absolutely no reason why we can't play music, but there's always going to be a kind of a playoff between where people choose to stand and are able to stand or sit, and where you can hear the music over the noise of the fireworks, which will be a limited space. So it's not a matter that we don't want to play music. We're happy to play music, but I don't think that we can justify spending thousands of pounds on a sound system that may project the sound another 30 or 40 feet. There's no way on earth that we are able to compete with the fireworks over any further distance. So there will be music, but I just think we have to be realistic about expectations of both music quality and the actual ability to compete with the fireworks. And is it reasonable for people to stand halfway down Camps Road and say, well, I can't hear the music? Well, of course you can't hear the music. So we will do the best we can within the parameters that are acceptable.
I think one thing also, Colin, just to be slightly negative on that, is in years gone by, the cones of the PA system have pointed towards the recreation ground rather than also pointing outwards. And I agree with you totally about the cost. I agree we ought to be trying to do it ourselves, or like was being talked about earlier about alternative sources of information. Laura, very quickly, then I've got Gary.
Thank you. Yeah, I totally agree. We shouldn't pay loads for a thing. I was talking about doing it ourselves, but what I was talking about wasn't just playing music with the fireworks. It was the thing that happened years ago now with Aladdin, where the fireworks company did a show basically that was like, they introduced the story and they said once there was a boy called Aladdin, and they played like, they did fireworks colored themed for Aladdin, and they played a song, and then they were like, oh, now here's Jafar, and they did red fireworks and played like an evil song. They were pop songs, they weren't songs from like the musical or whatever, but it was to tie in with the panto that we had at the time. And I think I don't know if, I can't remember if it's still the same company. I think it is, because I think I discussed it with them last year. And I think they and you had both said that they would do it again. But the issue was that everybody said they couldn't hear because the PA system or whatever it was just in the bandstand. So unless you were right by the bandstand, you couldn't hear. So, I mean, if we could have the PA system around so that, I mean, I don't know how it works. I have to confess complete ignorance to our PA system, to how it can be set up. But I'm just imagining if we could do something like that again, everyone who could hear it loved it. And it was just really exciting. And it encourages people to go to the panto because it's themed to the panto. So that was what I'm after, basically. I want more of that because it was incredible. I was near the bandstand and I could hear it. And it was great.
Yeah, if it's helpful. I mean, our PA system is a daisy chain and can go 100 meters or so along the frontage of the sort of Camps Road, so it can stretch out a long way. I think what you're talking about is where we actually kind of curate a particular theme through, and certainly there have been things in the past where the fireworks have paused and there's been a bit of music, narrative, etc. There's been music beforehand, and we can look at that. We haven't done that for quite a few years, but that is something that we could look at. But yeah, at the end of the day, we have a perfectly good sound system for the purposes of a fireworks display, in terms of getting sound over a wide area. Will it sound like you are at a Queen concert at Wembley? No, it won't.
No.
Will you be able to understand what people are saying, and will you be able to hear the music if you stand within a reasonable distance? Yes. And I think that's the best anyone can seriously ask for.
Okay, I've got Gary first, then Councillor Green, then Councillor Smith.
Sorry, to be clear, I thought we'd had this discussion last time, and we understood the nature of the feedback last year, that it was relatively quiet because we didn't have any music at all. That we were going to go with the speaker setup that we have pre-fireworks to have music, and I think, as Laura has mentioned, maybe we could work in some kind of way of theming that kind of delivery around the panto, etc., etc. And we can do that all in the time before the fireworks. But then once the fireworks starts, we weren't going to have themed music to the fireworks, as it's limited to who actually can hear it. So am I reading that was correct? Because I thought that was the way that we were going to deliver it in 2025. Is that correct?
Well, Gary, I think when it comes down to it, if people are saying they want to know that music was playing, then we can find some theme music. We can certainly base it on the panto, whatever we can do. We can play music the whole way through. But just like every single year ever, when the fireworks are going at full throttle, nobody will actually hear them. And there will be a point where it doesn't matter, what the music is playing, you're simply standing too far away. If you're standing 100 meters down Camps Road, it doesn't really matter what we're playing because you're not going to hear it regardless of any sound system.
Councillor Carini?
Yeah, personally, I don't really care whether there's music or not. I feel it worked quite well last year. The only thing I'm concerned about is going back to the storytelling during the fireworks. We did that for several years running, and there's a reason we stopped, because you'd have the fireworks and then suddenly there'd be this long pause. Sorry for me, the dog barking. There'd be this long pause where most people could hear nothing, and even if you could hear something, it was just mumbling. Because although there were speakers all along the front of the wreck, it just can't project far enough. And given the numbers of people we have that stand all along the road, they end up with this weird pause where it's like, well, what's happening? Is it finished? Are we going home? And then all of a sudden the fireworks will start again, followed by another pause. So I would avoid that at all costs. If we want to have background music, fine, but it should just be continuous fireworks and not trying to do some kind of story again.
Michael Smith?
Yeah, pretty much the same thing, really. I mean, it'd be good to have some music to sort of build the excitement before the event. And as has been said, music during the event is just background noise, isn't it? But if we can have something to build up the excitement, I think that would be good.
I'm going to ask this question, but it might be not for this year, but something to think about anyway. Again, is there an advantage or not of reconfiguring the wreck such you can get more people actually onto the side of the wreck rather than standing in the road? Because by the time you're stuck behind the toilet block or behind the health centre, you never see anything, you never hear anything. And we have loads of people every year stood in those areas. Would we be better off trying to move more people onto the wreck so they can see it by reconfiguring things slightly, where I don't know if it's possible, but just thinking about it.
The arrangement at the moment is simply based on prevailing winds, and we've tightened it a bit to remove a lot of the problems we had across Recreation Road. I mean, in theory, if the wind, and we all want to do a rain dance, perhaps we can persuade it to do it. If the wind could come from a different direction, then yes, the audience would be standing somewhere different as well. But invariably, it seems to come from the west, and therefore the layout we have is the safe layout. So yeah, I mean, we generally can't plan a different layout unless we can be absolutely sure for some reason the wind is not going to come from prevailing direction.
Yeah, I just based on the number of fireworks I picked up off the splash pad this last week, I don't think it was actually from the west last year. I was quite surprised. Laura, Councillor Miller-Jones.
Just wondering, do we have the fences at the sort of minimum safe distance from the fireworks, or is it possible to move them a bit closer to get more people in? I don't know if we've got a bit extra space to be on the safe side. I'm sure there are rules and regulations about how far the fencing has to be from the fireworks.
There are rules and regulations. So the minimum is more along Recreation Road. In terms of the fallout area, the actual line that we fence, yes, in theory there is greater capacity, but given Councillor Burns' comments about firework debris landing in the splash pad, which is literally on the line, then we probably on that basis I wouldn't want to enclose the area further. We basically, in terms of prevailing wind, we know in the morning which way the wind's going. We know the weather forecast for the day. And so generally speaking, you'll see much the same fencing goes out every single time. But there is a margin in there to allow the wind to change direction a little bit. If we close it down, we'd have to be more certain of the wind direction. And the difficulty we have is that the final say of whether or not those fireworks fire is down to the fireworks company and the senior firer. If we constrain the site, and I councillors will be aware that I've pyrotechnic and fired fireworks professionally for 25 years. If you can have a much more constrained site, but then the chances of you actually not being able to go ahead begin to incrementally increase the tighter you make the margins. So you just have to be careful. It's possible, but really you'd have to wait until 3 or 4 days before the event when you started seeing the likely weather before you could make those sorts of decisions.
You know me, I always like to suggest alternatives. Right, anybody else? Anything on the Christmas events? Any suggestions or anything else that we should be considering at this early stage? No? Great, thank you very much. Item 8, any other business, anybody? Anybody? Oh, Councillor Miller-Jones?
Sorry, it's not really other business. I just raised my hand too late at the end of the Halloween
Oh,
discussion.
okay, go on.
And moved on, and I feel like this is probably going to be shot down for any number of reasons. But I'm thinking about the queuing again. I was thinking about similar things that I've been to and how they work it. And what often happens at these kinds of events is that you have a sort of group system where you're, for example, given a color. Everybody who arrives, at a certain time gets given like a pink piece of paper and then you'll be told when to queue when it's pink's turn. And obviously they'd be told in advance to give them time for whatever they were doing, but it's like queuing in absentia. There's another word for it, but I can't remember what it is. So you have groups going through. So it's like, right, now it's orange's turn, now it's yellow's turn, and you use the loud hailers to get them to go to the queue when it's their turn. But it gives them that freedom to, walk around and do other things, so they're not stuck in the queue.
I think with
okay,
all these different ways of getting people in are all well and good until Mike Tyson's line of all's well and good until you get punched in the face. That's when the plan ends. So on the night itself, when you're literally trying to get 4,000 people in the site as quickly and as safely as possible, any type of queuing system is only as good as its weakest point. So we have to understand that getting people in, if you're giving out cards with color codings on, you've got people milling around, you've got people just coming forward. There's a whole bunch of variables that apply to this that depend upon site, upon nature of audience, upon nature of site, upon how many volunteers, how many stewards you have, what the security levels that you are, how does the site work, and so on and so on. And I think we try and get people in as simply as possible. And I think Councillor Carini mentioned it, that 95% of people coming onto the site barely register that they're queuing. They have a bit of a queue, they expect a queue, and it's a free event and they come through. A few people can say, well, it's a bit too long, in essence. And I think from my perspective, is not to over embellish the moaning that they had to queue for 25 minutes, 30 minutes. There's a little bit of a delay when we get the performers in for a snack and a cup of tea and so on and so on, but 95% of the people get in very safely, very comfortably, and have no issues whatsoever. So from my perspective is, I wouldn't like us to reinvent the wheel just to please what would essence be about 50 people. So from my perspective is, the key thing for me is to get those people onto that site as safely as possible and off again. That's all my job is. So I'd rather we did things as simply and as naturally as possible.
all right. Go ahead, go live, please.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I understand that fully, and it's not, it's not a hill I'm going to die on. I understand that, there would be issues with people having lost their ticket or not coming when they were called. But I'm thinking about the kids who are going to need the loo halfway through the queue, the people who have mobility issues and it's difficult to stand for that long, the sort of, the people who just, there are a lot of, it's not just 50 people. As John said, he got sort of 60 to 70 complaints alone, and that's only the people who saw John and complained to him. Like, do you know what I mean? And I understand. Fine. Yeah, it's just a queue. And I guess people don't have to come if they have mobility issues or whatever. I'm someone who I can't stand for a very long time, and I find queues very daunting for that reason. So, it may be that, I would decide, yeah, no, I'm not going to go because I don't want to risk sort of, an hour of standing if my legs are particularly bad, and that's fine. But it's also not that accessible, which is obviously an important thing. And then, yeah, you've got the kids who suddenly they're starving and they need the loo and all that kind of stuff. And I just think maybe not for this year, maybe it's something to think about. But I think that the risk of people, messing up the color system or whatever is probably there's going to be fewer people upset by that than the people who are upset by the queue. So I don't know. Like I said, not a hill I'm going to die on. I fully understand your point, Gary, but I do think it is something to think about because there are quite a lot of different groups of people that can be affected by a really long queue.
I mean, I'm not arguing fully against your points, Laura. I think they're all valid points and they're here for the discussion. I think we can mitigate for people with mobility issues. We do work quite well if someone has clear, obvious issues about standing for any great length of time. We could work at, maybe there's a kind of a system that we've used before where they could contact the office and we could have a way in, and they'd have to have a particular sheet that could come from the office to cut the queue, as lots of other sites do that. So we can get around that. I think just my main take on it is let's get them in quickly as possible.
Well, we've got loads of time to sort this out anyway. Councillor Lucrini.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it's worth adding that where people needed to use the toilet, we did help them get to the toilets. That might be slightly harder with the new queuing position, but and also where appropriate, there was people that I helped get to the front of the queue where they had children that looked like that they were struggling and wouldn't be able to stay in that queue any longer. We got them to the front, so we were keeping an eye out for those that needed assistance.
Okay. One final thing for me on that is it would be nice to try and go back to what we had before, where we used to get lots and lots of money donated at the fireworks and the Halloween trail. I would like to see, perhaps, if we're going to use the Air Cadets, is they run along the front of the public facing thing. I remember Betty did it one year and she got about 900 quid in her buckets. To try and help us, every little bit helps, as a certain saying goes. So just like something else to think about. Okay, so anyway, I said any other business, nothing came up there. And finally, number 9, date of next meeting is not the 14th of April, it's actually the 8th of July. Which, sorry, I was looking up while you were doing things. Right, thank you very much. So we'll meet there.